Hey guys, tonight we're plunging headfirst into the slippery, scandalous, and occasionally itchy world of medieval concubines. Not the romance novel kind, not the spa day at the palace kind. We're talking about the real, brutally awkward existence. Stuck somewhere between luxury and captivity, pampered and paranoid, wielding just enough power to get yourself in trouble, and sleeping with one eye open in case the queen gets creative. So before you get too comfortable, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy my questionable life choices and historical bedtime ramblings. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time you gave up on real sleep tonight. Now, dim the lights, start up a fan, maybe pull the covers up to your chin like you're hiding from medieval court intrigue, and settle in. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it really felt like to be a concubine in a world where career growth meant hoping your rival accidentally drank the wrong tea? Did anyone ever get a day off from being ornamental? What did you even do all day when you weren't busy dodging rumors, palace politics, or smallpox? What happened if you annoyed the wrong duchess, or if your beauty routine involved lead paint and medieval mascara? Could you survive on pomegranate seeds and court gossip alone? Did anyone ever actually love a concubine? Or was it just a centuries-long episode of Real Housewives? Medieval edition. And real talk, when you're surrounded by velvet, gold, and constant fear for your life, do you ever get bored? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1423. You're not a noble. You're not exactly a servant either. You're somewhere in the baffling middle. A concubine, the royal favourite for now. Your pillow smells faintly of perfume, resentment, and something weirdly metallic. And the day is just beginning. The sun creeps in through stained glass, painting the chamber in expensive colours you're not allowed to touch. You wake up on a mattress that's surprisingly lumpy for something draped in brocade. Around you, the muffled sounds of servants, other concubines, and at least 2 squabbling peacocks let you know you're still property, just with slightly better thread count. You open your eyes to a world that smells faintly of rose water, candle wax, and the very specific scent of peacock droppings. The ceiling above you is high and painted with fading scenes of cherubs, none of whom look particularly happy to be here either. Your pillowcase is embroidered with gold thread, but it's as scratchy as your dignity after last night's friendly poetry competition. You turn over, careful not to wrinkle your hair, because the bedhead look hasn't been invented yet, and in the medieval harem, there's a dedicated person whose only job is to tell you your braid looks sad. Next to you, on the other side of a very symbolic curtain, another concubine is already whispering morning prayers. Or maybe she's just reciting the list of people she needs to avoid today. The air is thick with tension and the soft swish of slippers on polished stone. There is no such thing as sleeping in. You wake with the dawn whether you want to or not, because in the palace the early bird gets the best breakfast. Or at least the least stale bread. You swing your feet down onto an ornate carpet, so lavish it's rumoured to have cost more than your entire village. It's a little frayed around the edges. You'd think royal budgets could cover a new one, but apparently that line item got spent on a gold-plated duck last year. Everything in your room is a reminder that luxury is for looking, not for enjoying. The vase of lilies on your table is off-limits. So is the window seat with the perfect view of the garden. You can look, you can smell, but don't even think about sitting down with a book, especially if you can't read, which, let's be honest, most concubines can't. If you're lucky, you can stare at the view and daydream about running away. If you're unlucky, your only escape is in your sleep, which is over for today. A bell clangs in the corridor, the signal for everybody up. It's not quite the medieval equivalent of a snooze button, more like the opening buzzer at a gladiator match. Servants sweep in, moving faster than you ever could, carrying trays of water, cloths, and a truly terrifying selection of lotions. You're expected to get up, stretch gracefully, and not look annoyed when the handmaid tells you you've overslept by 5 minutes. In the palace, time is measured in how long it takes for the queen to get annoyed. Other concubines bustle around you, each one trying to look more serene than the next, all while giving each other the side eye. It's a beauty pageant, a chess game, and a hostage situation all at once. You try to look dignified, mysterious, and completely unbothered by the fact that your favorite slippers have gone missing again. Spoiler, they're probably in your rival's room, being borrowed in the name of fashion warfare. Breakfast is a ways off, but already your stomach is staging a quiet protest. You'd kill for coffee, but the best you'll get is a weak herbal infusion, and maybe a bite of bread that's only slightly less stale than your hope for a peaceful morning. Someone somewhere is already rehearsing a lute solo, and the woman next to you is humming a hymn so off-key it could be used as a weapon. Before you can even fully wake up, a supervisor appears with the day's schedule. Today you'll attend prayers, practice embroidery, listen to the prince's new favorite poem, again, and, if you're lucky, avoid any major scandals. You nod, smile, and pretend that you weren't secretly hoping the peacocks would stage a coup. The truth is, waking up in the royal harem is a masterclass in pretending. You pretend you're happy. You pretend you're honored. You pretend you're not at all worried about what's going to happen when the sun sets again. But as you smooth your hair and paste on a smile, you remind yourself, at least you're not the peacock. He has to do this all in feathers. And with that, your day as a medieval concubine begins. Equal parts pageantry, paranoia, and pretending not to care when someone else gets the best cushion. Welcome to morning in the palace. Good luck. It's bath time, except forget rose petals and tranquil music. It's a parade of attendants, buckets, suspiciously lukewarm water, and a strong chance you're getting scrubbed with lye soap that leaves you redder than a boiled lobster. Privacy? Please. Modesty? Absolutely not. You shuffle along the corridor in your dressing gown, if you're lucky enough to get a fresh one, which depends mostly on palace laundry politics and whether the head servant likes you this week. The bathhouse isn't some candlelit sanctuary with a fluffy robe and a cucumber mask. It's more like a communal sports locker room, but with more splinters and way less team spirit. Imagine a stone room echoing with the sounds of clinking copper basins, nervous giggling, and that one attendant who always thinks she's being helpful by dumping the rinse water before you've even finished washing your left arm. The centerpiece of the ritual is the mighty wooden tub, large enough for two, if you don't mind playing kneesies with the person next to you, which you absolutely do. The water arrives in buckets, carried up several flights of stairs by servants who have clearly given up on smiling. By the time the last bucket arrives, the temperature has gone from maybe this will be relaxing to this is definitely a prank. If you were hoping for a bubble bath, congratulations. The only bubbles are from the questionable well water, and nobody wants to know why. Getting undressed is a public event. You might have seen ancient paintings of beautiful ladies demurely dipping their toes in the bath. The reality is, you, an audience of 3 to 5 helpful women, and the awkward struggle of trying not to slip and make your entire social status disappear in one soap-slicked moment. If you're shy, don't worry. The harem has a strict leave your shame at the door policy. Everyone is inspecting everyone else for bruises, bites, or evidence of a forbidden midnight snack. The gossipy commentary flows faster than the water. The soap is homemade and roughly the consistency of a brick. It smells like lye, lard, and distant disappointment. Your skin squeaks as the attendants scrub, and you wonder if exfoliation is just medieval code for remove the top 3 layers of your dignity. Sometimes, a visiting herbalist gets creative and tosses in some rosemary or lavender, but mostly it just stings in new and exciting ways. Washing your hair is a whole separate ordeal. Forget gentle shampoo. What you get is more like a chemistry experiment involving eggs, stale ale, and a prayer that the lice go quietly. Some attendants swear by a rinse of vinegar, which does kill the bugs, but leaves you smelling like a side salad for the rest of the day. The combs are wooden, the tangles are epic, and the chances of emerging with all your hair still attached are slim. You try to remind yourself that suffering builds character, or, at the very least, calluses. All the while, The other concubines keep up a steady stream of small talk, mostly palace gossip, occasionally hygiene tips, always at least 30% passive-aggressive. Who got a new dress? Who looked tired at prayers? Who accidentally called the queen's poodle chunky? The bath is equal parts cleansing ritual and strategic alliance building. Friendships and grudges are born in the steam. If you're smart, you laugh at the right moments and avoid commenting on anyone's elbows. When you're finally declared clean, you stand shivering in a drafty corner while your attendant dabs you with a towel that's definitely seen better centuries. No one tells you that towels double as headscarves, dusters, and sometimes emergency peacock blankets. You pull on your dressing gown and try to forget that next week you'll have to do this all again, if not sooner, depending on your luck, your schedule, or a surprise royal decree. After all that, you step out smelling faintly of soap, vinegar, and anxiety. Your skin a little raw, your social standing mostly intact, and your humility thoroughly scrubbed. Congratulations, you're now considered fit to appear in public. In the palace, cleanliness isn't just next to godliness, it's a full contact sport. And if you're not careful, you'll lose points for both form and execution. Your beauty kit contains more dangerous substances than a modern chemistry lab. The ideal look? Pale as a ghost, lips stained with something that might be beetroot or possibly crushed bugs, and eyebrows plucked into oblivion. This isn't self-care, this is medieval hazard pay. You sit at a tiny, gilded table facing a wobbly mirror polished just enough to show you every flaw, every fresh pimple, and every anxious wrinkle from last night's dreams of escape. Around you, the tools of the trade, jars, powders, combs, and enough sharp tweezers to make your local salon weep. The attendant on your left is grinding something in a bowl. Is it pearl dust or old chalk? The answer is yes. The day's beauty regimen begins with a quick survey of your face by someone whose job title might as well be Royal Judgment Deliverer. Is your skin pale enough? If not, out comes the lead powder. Yes, actual lead. You dab it on, blending until your complexion screams recently exhumed but make it fashion. Side effects include headaches, hair loss, and the sort of existential dread that comes from realizing your makeup is also a slow poison. But hey, at least you'll look flawless, right up until you faint in the embroidery hall. Once your skin tone is sufficiently ghostly, it's time for the cheeks. The beauty ideal here is light, feverish glow, which you achieve by either pinching your face until it's red, dabbing on mashed berries, or, if you're feeling truly medieval, using a touch of mercury-based rouge. There's a certain thrill in knowing that your beauty routine is only marginally less dangerous than jousting. Now for the eyebrows. The trend? Invisible. Medieval beauty manuals recommend plucking, shaving, or even singeing your brows into nothingness. The idea is to leave your forehead looking as large and intimidating as a castle wall. The higher the brow, the closer to God, or at least the closer to being mistaken for a startled owl. If you slip up and accidentally remove too much, don't worry. Someone will lend you a bit of soot and a steady hand to pencil them back in. That's friendship, medieval style. Next, the lips. Red is the goal, but not the cheerful I'm thriving red. More of a, I've just bitten into a poisonous fruit vibe. Some concubines use beetroot. Others, well, that's not berry juice, that's just plain old crushed cochineal bugs. It stains for hours and tastes faintly of regret. You smear it on, practicing your mysterious, slightly pained smile in the mirror. If your hair survived last night's sleep, congratulations. If not, you're about to test the tensile strength of your scalp. Your maid combs through knots using a mixture of lard and rosemary, leaving you with hair that shines, smells vaguely edible, and is basically one bonfire away from disaster. For special occasions, you might get a sprinkle of gold dust, or, if the rumors are true, a touch of pigeon droppings for shine. Every hair is carefully twisted, braided, or pinned until your head feels heavier than your dignity. Don't forget the breath. With no toothpaste, you're offered a sprig of parsley, a rinse with wine, or, in truly desperate times, cloves. If you still don't pass the breathe in my face test, you get demoted to the back of the singing group. Finally, you check your hands. Softness is essential. Hands that look too rough say peasant. Hands that look too smooth say I don't do my own embroidery, which, ironically, could also get you in trouble. So you rub in rose oil, then try not to touch anything for fear of leaving greasy fingerprints on the Queen's favorite tapestry. By the time you're done, you are a masterpiece of medieval chemistry and sheer willpower. You're radiant, you're ready, and you're only slightly radioactive. As you glide out of your chamber, just remember, beauty is pain, and in the palace, it's also a full-time job with no health plan and an alarming amount of lard. Welcome to your morning. Try not to sweat, it ruins the powder. Getting dressed is an Olympic event. Silk, satin, fur, if you're lucky. But every layer is a status symbol and a political landmine. Wear the wrong color, and suddenly you're the subject of tomorrow's palace gossip. You stand in front of your open wardrobe, which looks impressive until you realize that most of it belongs to the palace. And all of it comes with strings attached, literally and politically. Each garment is a riddle. Is it clean? Is it appropriate for today's court mood? Will the Queen think you're imitating her if you wear ermine, or will she be insulted if you don't? Even your underdress is a gamble. Choose linen if you want to breathe. Choose wool if you want to itch. Either way, your choices are being silently judged by a rotating cast of attendants who seem to know what you wore last Wednesday and have opinions about it. The first layer is usually a chemise, soft if you're lucky, scratchy if the laundry budget ran out before your turn. Over that comes the kirtle, fitted tight enough to ensure you have excellent posture and absolutely no chance of breathing easily until after sunset. Someone tugs at your sleeves to make sure everything sits just so. The laces are pulled tighter, tighter, until you begin to see spots and wonder if you'll be the first concubine to faint before breakfast. Spoiler: you won't be. Color is everything. Are you feeling bold? Red is the shade of power, but also scandal. Blue suggests loyalty, but if the wrong noblewoman's wearing it, you might look like a social climber. Gold and silver scream favorite, but woe to you if you appear to be showing off. Even green can get you in trouble if it's associated with a rival family or, worse, last year's embarrassing court incident involving a goose and a tray of pastries. If you're indecisive, congratulations. You'll blend in with the tapestries, which honestly is sometimes the safest choice. Next come the accessories, a process that will take longer than your actual breakfast. Belts, girdles, ribbons, jeweled pins, and the ever-present question, tiara or no tiara? Wear too many pearls, and people will whisper that you're pretending to be a princess. Wear too few, and you're accused of not making an effort. A missing brooch can be a minor scandal or a subtle act of rebellion, depending on who notices. Then there are shoes. If you have proper slippers, count yourself lucky. Most are just slightly fancier versions of peasant clogs, designed more to show off your ankles than to protect your feet. If your toes are blue from cold, just pretend it's the latest fashion. Remember, comfort is for people who don't have to curtsy in front of the king twice before lunch. Headwear is a minefield of its own. The hennin, that famous pointy hat, is popular, but only if it's the right height, angle, and has just enough veil to be mysterious without being impractical. Too low, and you look like you're hiding something. Too high, and you look like you're about to take flight. If the Queen favors flower crowns this month, everyone suddenly becomes an amateur florist. Get it wrong, and you'll spend the day enduring the sort of looks that could curdle cream. Of course, all this dressing is done under the watchful gaze of handmaids and other concubines, who are both your fashion critics and your fiercest competition. Every adjustment is a strategic maneuver. Every glance in the mirror is an act of survival. The simple act of tying a sash becomes a high-stakes political play. Are you tying it right over left or left over right? Yes, someone is keeping score. And let's not forget the weather. In winter, You're layered up so thick you waddle like a sleep-deprived duck. In summer, you're trapped in so many layers of silk and linen that you're basically being slow-cooked for court consumption. Either way, the phrase dress to impress here means dress to survive, physically, socially, and, if the rumors are true, sometimes magically. By the time you're ready, you're exhausted and haven't even left your room. One last look in the mirror, one last silent prayer that today your wardrobe choices will fly under the radar. Because in the palace, fashion isn't just about beauty, it's about politics, survival, and not giving your enemies an easy punchline. Welcome to another day of sartorial warfare. Hope you tied your girdle tight. You eat in public, surrounded by rivals and judgment. Breakfast is less about food and more about keeping your wits sharp. Don't eat too much, don't look too hungry, and never, ever spill anything on your borrowed velvet. You take your place at the long, polished table, already feeling the weight of 24 eyes, taking mental notes about your posture, your mood, and what kind of bread you reach for first. There are no solitary breakfasts here, no pajamas, no slouching, and absolutely no eating with your hands unless you want to be the next day's cautionary tale. Everything is a performance, and your audience is full of critics, who also happen to be your competition for royal attention, plum assignments, and, on rare lucky mornings, the last slice of soft cheese. Servants file in, silent and efficient, setting down trays of food that range from just edible to probably symbolic. There are eggs, boiled to the consistency of rubber, limp greens that have clearly seen better seasons, hunks of bread so dense you could use them as building material, and, if fortune favors you, a spoonful of jam whose flavor has been whispered about for weeks. You eye the selection, wondering which items have been poisoned, sabotaged, or simply left out as bait for someone too eager. Picking a treat too fast is social suicide. Picking nothing at all just marks you as difficult. You start with a polite nibble, all the while tuning your ears to the babble of conversation around you. Gossip swirls like a draft under the tablecloth. Who got a new necklace? Who's been summoned to the prince's study? Who is looking a little peaked today? You're careful not to join in, at least not until you're sure which way the wind is blowing. Instead, you smile, laugh softly at jokes, and pretend that the taste of last night's stale rye isn't making you question your life choices. Every movement is calculated. You hold your spoon with exactly the right grip, making sure your pinky doesn't stick out like an ambitious goose. You break your bread with delicate fingers, keeping crumbs on your plate and not on your lap, or, heaven forbid, the rug. You chew quietly. You swallow demurely. It's like a job interview, but with more lace and slightly higher stakes. Get it wrong, and the head table might go suspiciously quiet, followed by a slow, deliberate turn of noble heads in your direction. There's a strict hierarchy to seating. If you've fallen out of favor, your seat migrates further from the fire, closer to the drafty end of the room, and usually next to that one cousin who never stops talking about her spiritual visions. Get too close to the royal family, and everyone suddenly wants to be your best friend, or your sworn enemy. Sometimes both before the jam is passed. If you're lucky, you'll escape breakfast with your dignity intact and your tunic unstained. If you're unlucky, you'll drop a grape, tip a cup, or laugh a little too loudly at the wrong moment. Instant scandal. The last concubine who spilled her milk spent a week being called Lady Clumsy behind her back, and not even the most lavish gift basket could wash that away. Every day, the menu changes, but the tension stays the same. One morning you might find honeyed pastries, if the palace bees are feeling generous and the queen is in a good mood. Another morning, it's boiled oats and silence. Meat is rare, fruit is rarer, and coffee doesn't even exist. You sip thin, herbal brew and pretend you don't miss caffeine, because longing for things you can't have is basically the palace's favorite sport. When the meal is over, you rise gracefully, always gracefully, thank the nearest servant, and glide away from the table, hoping you've survived another round of breakfast politics. It's not about being full, It's about being unscathed. You leave the hall, stomach still half empty, but at least your reputation is still mostly intact. That's breakfast in the palace. 1 part meal, 2 parts psychological obstacle course, and a garnish of paranoia. Would you like jam with that? Too bad. The favorite took the last spoonful. Your room might have a view, or it might have a view of the wall. Privacy is minimal, and so is actual rest. Sleep comes in fits, interrupted by servants, rivals, and your own intrusive thoughts about whether that creak was the Queen's spy. The palace is quietest at night, which means you can hear every sound. Each shuffle in the hallway, every distant cough, and the mysterious clang that might be a guard dropping his spear or, worse, a rival making her move. Your bedroom door is thick but not soundproof. Even in luxury, you're just one thin latch away from the entire court's business. The room itself is decorated to impress, but after a week or two, the glamour starts to feel like stage dressing for a particularly stressful play. Tapestries on the walls are designed to keep out the draft, but they also provide excellent hiding spots for nosy attendants and eavesdropping ladies-in-waiting. You once heard a story about a maid falling asleep behind a curtain and waking up hours later to the world's most awkward conversation about someone's unfortunate rash. You don't doubt it. Sometimes you catch glimpses of movement in the fabric, and you wonder, is it a mouse, a ghost, or just the drafty wind? Either way, you sleep with one eye open. Your bed is the centerpiece. Technically a privilege, practically a trap. The mattress is stuffed with feathers or straw, and the sheets are fine linen that only stay clean for about 15 minutes after the laundry maid leaves. Every evening you do a ceremonial check for bugs, pins, and, once, a threatening note written in surprisingly neat calligraphy. The canopy above you is meant to protect your sleep, but you can't help imagining it collapsing under the weight of all your anxieties. There's a tiny window in your room, probably placed just out of reach to keep you humble. If you're lucky, it looks out on the gardens or a glimpse of the river, just enough to remind you that there's a world beyond royal politics. If you're not lucky, you're rewarded with the soothing sight of the stables, where you can watch horses doing their business and wonder if they have fewer trust issues than you do. Servants come and go at all hours, sometimes with actual tasks, more often with excuses. Just bringing your water, my lady. Did you need another candle, my lady? Sometimes you think they're just checking that you haven't run away, stolen the silver, or started a secret midnight knitting club. You startle awake at least twice a night, once to the sound of your own thoughts, and once to someone tripping over the threshold while delivering a letter that couldn't wait until morning. Spoiler, it usually could. If you share a wall with another concubine, congratulations, you're now privy to every detail of her dreams, nightmares, and the ongoing saga of her cousin's foot fungus. Thin walls make for thick drama. Occasionally, you'll hear hushed arguments, whispered gossip, or the unmistakable sound of someone practicing flattery for tomorrow's audience with the prince. Personal belongings are precious, but never quite safe. Jewelry must be hidden, notes burned, and even your favorite comb is liable to disappear, only to reappear weeks later in someone else's hair. You develop an instinct for hiding things in the least obvious places. Inside a hollowed-out prayer book, beneath a loose tile, or, in desperate times, behind a very judgmental portrait of Saint Apollonia. You'd think the royal bedroom would be an oasis, but it's more like a pressure cooker. By dawn, you're grateful for any sleep you manage to steal between anxiety attacks and abrupt visits. You rise, fix your bed, and prepare to face another day of public smiling, private plotting, and the exhausting art of pretending you slept well. And as you pass the mirror, you remind yourself, in the palace, even rest is a contest you're expected to win. Welcome to another sleepless night in the royal harem. No one hands you a rule book, but everyone expects you to know the rules. Smile, but not too much. Don't outshine the queen. Never trust anyone who offers you candied almonds. The palace is a place of invisible tripwires and social traps, where survival depends less on beauty or charm, and more on your sixth sense for danger, usually in the form of polite conversation. If you're new here, congratulations. You're about to fail spectacularly at least once before breakfast. Veteran concubines have an uncanny ability to glide through the day, never making a misstep, while you're still trying to figure out whether a bowed head means respect, fear, or the start of a migraine. Rule number 1. Never be the first to speak. There is a delicate dance to conversation in the harem. If you're too quiet, you'll be labeled dull, or worse, plotting. If you're too chatty, you're considered a gossip. The perfect concubine knows how to say just enough to sound interesting and just little enough to remain mysterious. Think of it as walking a tightrope while balancing a teapot on your head and dodging flying hairpins. Second rule, never, under any circumstances, sit in the wrong chair. The seating chart is the Rosetta Stone of the palace. Sit too close to the queen and you're accused of ambition. Too far and you're accused of sulking. Choose the wrong spot at a banquet and you'll spend the next week at the drafty end of the table, next to the one-eyed priest who smells faintly of pickled onions. No one tells you this until it's too late. And about those candied almonds? They're never just a snack. In the harem, every gift is loaded. Accept the wrong present, and you might be seen as taking sides in a simmering feud that started over a spilled wine jug back in 1406. Refuse a gift, and you insult the giver. Either way, the gesture will be dissected in the laundry room by noon. Don't ever outshine the queen. This isn't just advice, it's law. She is the sun, and you are, at best, a particularly sparkly moon. Wear anything remotely fancier than her on a holy day, and you might find your new silk dress repurposed as cleaning rags before sundown. The safe bet is to let her make the bold fashion choices, then quietly emulate them 2 weeks later. Not sooner. Not later. Palace trends operate on a schedule that makes the stock market look stable. Smile, but with restraint. Too much cheerfulness makes you seem insincere, or, worse, simple. Too little, and you'll be accused of plotting. You develop a signature smile. Part Mona Lisa. Part please don't let me spill my soup again. Master the art of smiling at jokes you don't understand, especially when nobles are testing your loyalty by telling stories that may or may not end in treason. Keep your secrets. Loose lips are the #1 cause of early retirement in the harem, usually accompanied by a sudden transfer to a nunnery on the coldest hilltop in the kingdom. If you hear something juicy, nod thoughtfully, say nothing, and make sure you're never alone in the room with the person at the center of the rumor. You're a concubine, not a confessional. Then, there's the etiquette of favors. You'll be asked to pass messages, deliver scarves, or swap rooms just for a night. If you say yes to everyone, you'll be run ragged and end up at the bottom of the social ladder. Say no too often, and your offers of friendship will dry up faster than the kitchen's milk supply. The trick is to help strategically. Assist those on the rise, avoid the falling stars, and always be busy when trouble comes knocking. Finally, know when to disappear. The most successful concubines have perfected the art of vanishing just before tempers flare, meals go cold, or the queen's mood takes a sudden downturn. A well-timed errand or embroidery emergency can save you from being caught in the crossfire. Think of yourself as palace camouflage, always present, rarely seen, and never in the way when disaster strikes. So you glide, smile, and practice looking harmless yet indispensable. You learn the rules not from a book, but from watching, listening, and surviving 100 minor catastrophes. The unwritten laws of concubine survival are passed down in whispers, sidelong glances, and the occasional cryptic embroidery pattern. In the palace, ignorance isn't bliss, it's just a shortcut to the back exit. The queen is not your friend. Sometimes, she's not even your enemy. She's a force of nature, and your job is to survive her storms. Sometimes you're ignored, sometimes you're a target, and sometimes you're a pawn in a very complicated chess game. Her moods set the tone for the entire palace, like the weather report you never wanted but absolutely have to heed. Is she smiling at breakfast? You might actually relax for 5 minutes. Is she silent and tapping her goblet? Cancel your plans, postpone your hair appointment, and prepare for an emergency embroidery session. If she's angry, the entire harem tiptoes around as if the tiles are made of hot coals, except, of course, for the one concubine who always manages to trip into disaster and drag everyone else along. Some days, the queen barely acknowledges your existence. She breezes past you like you're a decorative vase, nice to look at, occasionally useful, and ultimately replaceable. These are the good days. You keep your head down, agree with everything she says, and pray she doesn't notice you blending into the wallpaper. But invisibility isn't guaranteed. Sometimes she'll catch your eye across the room, and you'll have no idea if you're about to be praised for your manners or accused of stealing her favorite cushion. You didn't. This time, there are days when she's actually in a good mood, chatting about fashion or her latest pet project, usually a lapdog with more jewelry than sense. She'll ask your opinion on a new dress or invite you to taste a suspicious new jam. This is the trickiest terrain of all, because your answer is never just your answer. Like a medieval Rorschach test, the wrong opinion can make or break your social standing. Enthusiastic agreement? Too eager. Polite suggestion? Too ambitious. Criticism? May God have mercy on your soul. But when the storm clouds gather, run for cover. If the queen's upset, maybe the king's gaze lingered too long at dinner, or a rival noblewoman sent a friendly letter, everyone suffers. She'll take it out on whoever's nearby. Maybe your job for the day is to hold a tray of tarts and endure a monologue about betrayal. Maybe you'll be sent to organize the library scrolls, a punishment only marginally more interesting than actual exile. Sometimes it's worse. You're called out in public, forced to explain why you wore blue, why you danced with Lord So-and-so, or why your embroidery looks suspiciously cheerful for a Wednesday. You quickly learn to read the signs. Is she pacing? Stay away. Is she smiling with too many teeth? She's about to make someone cry. Are her favorites suddenly missing from the room? They're either in trouble or have mastered the art of timely invisibility. If she invites you for a walk, check the weather. It might be a genuine stroll or an elaborate lead-up to a scolding delivered with maximum privacy and minimum witnesses. And don't even think about alliances. One day, she'll pit you against another concubine just to see who cracks first. She keeps everyone guessing, and sometimes you wonder if she genuinely enjoys the chaos or if she's just as trapped as the rest of you, wielding power because it's the only thing she has left. When the queen is truly displeased, talk of exile begins to circulate. Sometimes it's just rumor, palace drama in full bloom. Sometimes it's real, and a familiar face vanishes overnight. The official story is always vague. She's been sent to a country estate to rest. Translation: don't write, don't visit, don't even whisper her name. You tell yourself it can't happen to you, but every concubine in the harem knows that the breeze from the queen's wrath can send anyone flying. So, you master the art of weathering storms, keep your umbrella handy, your compliments vague, and your escape plan up to date. In the harem, the queen's mood is the climate, and you? You're just hoping for a mild season, or at least a warning before the next thunderclap. Rumors move faster than fleas. A single careless word can get you demoted from favorite to forgotten. You develop the hearing of a bat, always tuned in to who's falling out of favor, who's been caught sneaking, and who's definitely lying about their age. Welcome to the harem's true currency, information. There are no smartphones, no Wi-Fi, no Instagram, just a living, breathing rumor mill powered by maids, footmen, and concubines who've made eavesdropping into an Olympic sport. You'd think, surrounded by gold leaf and silk curtains, that people would have better things to do. But when your entire career depends on who's whispering about whom, you learn to read lips faster than a medieval ventriloquist. Conversations are conducted in code. Did you hear Lady Esme was up late embroidering? Translation: she was definitely not embroidering. The cook's apprentice delivered an extra loaf to Lady Margot. Oh, she's in trouble now. And if you hear the Queen looked thoughtful at breakfast, you'd better clear your schedule. Something dramatic is about to happen. It's not just the concubines who gossip. Servants are the backbone of the information network, and their loyalties shift with the tides. You make a point to greet the kitchen maid, compliment the stable boy's new haircut, even if he's still wearing last year's bowl cut, and always tip the laundry girl with a leftover sweet. Every crumb of kindness buys you a crumb of gossip, and sometimes a warning before disaster strikes. The stakes couldn't be higher. Being the subject of a rumor is like catching a medieval cold. It spreads fast, is impossible to shake, and can make your life miserable for weeks. 1 minute you're the prince's special friend. The next, you're the unfortunate punchline in a story about too much mead and a runaway peacock. It only happened once, and the peacock is fine, mostly. Some of the gossip is harmless, just palace-level small talk. Who wore last season's velvet? Who fainted during mass because she skipped breakfast? But the juicy stuff is dangerous. Whispers about secret lovers, rumors of missing jewels, accusations of petty theft or treason. These tales don't just live in the corridors. They thrive, mutate, and come back stronger. Your only hope is to keep your own secrets locked up tight and your ears open at all times. Of course, not all rumors are true. Some are started by rivals looking to trip you up before the next festival. Others are the work of bored ladies-in-waiting or disgruntled servants seeking payback after a poorly timed request for extra bathwater. You learn to trace the origins of a story the way a detective traces a footprint. If the tale came from old Marta, the scullery maid, it's probably exaggerated. If it started in the Queen's chambers, take it seriously and prepare accordingly. You quickly discover that being a source of gossip is almost as bad as being its target. If you're known as a chatterbox, people stop trusting you, and in the palace, trust is worth more than pearls. So, you perfect the art of saying nothing while seeming to say everything. Nods, raised eyebrows, meaningful pauses, these are your tools. If someone corners you for an opinion, you reply with a diplomatic, "Oh, I hadn't heard that," and let them fill in the blanks. Sometimes, you use gossip to your advantage. Need to distract from your own minor scandal? Casually mention that Lady Sabine was seen in the garden after dark. Want to deflect a difficult question from the Queen? Bring up the ongoing mystery of the missing silver spoon. If all else fails, start a rumor about a phantom cat haunting the laundry room. The palace will be talking about it for weeks. But gossip is a double-edged sword. It can elevate you, destroy you, or, if you're really unlucky, do both before lunchtime. The only certainty is that you'll never be bored. So you keep your ears open, your words measured, and your secrets locked away. Because in the medieval palace, information isn't just power, it's survival. You're never alone. The other concubines are your companions, your competitors, and occasionally your worst nightmares. Alliances form and collapse like overcooked soufflés. Trust is a luxury, one you can't afford. Living in the palace is a never-ending group project where everyone wants an A, nobody wants to share their notes, and at least 2 people are actively trying to get you expelled. At first, you might imagine some sisterly camaraderie. Midnight confessions, mutual support, maybe even a group vent session about the prince's taste in poetry. But within hours, you learn that every friendship here comes with an expiration date and a non-refundable deposit on drama. The daily routine is a constant balancing act. You need allies. Someone to whisper warnings about the Queen's latest mood. Someone who will cover for you if you accidentally oversleep. Someone who will slip you a sprig of mint when your morning breath could threaten an alliance with Hungary. But each favor owed is another invisible string pulling you in unpredictable directions. The same person who helps you today might be plotting your undoing tomorrow, and sometimes it's less personal than you'd think. It's just boredom. Medieval palaces are surprisingly monotonous, and a little sabotage spices things up. Take, for instance, the harmless pranks. A swapped hair ribbon here, a misplaced letter there, a mysterious rash of lost slippers before the midsummer festival. Nothing outright cruel, usually, but always enough to keep you on your toes. Did Lady Beatrice just compliment your new gown, or is she trying to distract you while her ally swipes your favourite brooch? Should you trust Lady Celine's embroidery tip, or will it leave you with fingers dyed blue for a week? Suspicion is your constant accessory. It's not all petty drama, of course. There are moments of real kindness. You might share a joke with someone while waiting for an audience with the prince, or sit side by side in the bathhouse, united in mutual discomfort. These moments are fleeting, and always shadowed by the unspoken reality that only one of you can be the favourite for long. Compliments and secrets are traded in equal measure, and you learn quickly that what's said between friends after sunset may become ammunition for gossip before dawn. Every concubine develops her own strategy for survival. Some are open and bubbly, disarming everyone with relentless cheerfulness. Others go for the silent, mysterious act, never volunteering opinions, never revealing their hand. A few become jokesters, using humour to diffuse tension and sidestep questions. Then there are the chronic planners, the ones who always seem to have an extra handkerchief, a backup plan, and a mysterious aunt in a neighbouring kingdom, just in case. Occasionally, alliances go beyond casual friendship and slide into full-blown partnerships. These are the ride-or-die duos who always sit together, always back each other up, and whose combined influence can shape palace rumours for weeks at a time. But the flip side is just as common. Explosive public falling outs, tearful reconciliations, and the slow, painful realization that your best friend is also your main rival. Betrayal stings, but it's never quite a surprise. Maybe your confidant reveals your secret crush to the queen, or maybe she just accidentally lets slip that you skipped morning prayers. One day you're sharing stolen pastries. The next, she's volunteering your name for the worst royal chore of the week. You learn to keep your most precious secrets locked away, trust only what you see with your own eyes, and never, ever let your guard down, not even during lute practice. In the end, palace life among the concubines is a dizzying mix of camaraderie and cutthroat competition. You forge connections, but never chains. Every morning, you size up the mood, tally your friends and frenemies, and prepare for another day of backstabbing, borrowed shawls, and forced smiles. After all, there's only one thing more dangerous than an enemy in the harem, a friend with something to gain. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, so your hands are never idle. You learn embroidery, poetry, music, and how to look serene while plotting 6 different escape routes in your head. The palace has an endless appetite for improvement, yours specifically. As a concubine, your day is a carousel of refinement, spinning from one lesson to the next, all designed to transform you into a perfect ornament for the royal court. The truth? It's less finishing school and more endless summer camp, but with fewer s'mores and more existential dread. First up, embroidery. The room smells faintly of old wool, wilted flowers, and the growing suspicion that you'll spend the rest of your life sewing daisies onto handkerchiefs. You sit cross-legged on a cushion that is both too lumpy and suspiciously damp, surrounded by other women who seem to have been born holding a needle. Some go for flowers, others for intricate scenes, a knight, a unicorn, a sad goat. You pick whatever seems least likely to cause scandal, all while pretending your thread hasn't knotted for the 5th time in 10 minutes. The trick is to look serene, even as you mentally curse whoever invented split stitch. Embroidery is more than just decoration, it's code. Your choice of colours and patterns signals everything from your mood to your allegiances. A purple border might mean you favour the queen. Green leaves might suggest you're hoping for luck, or at least a less dramatic afternoon. If you're really bold, you might sneak a tiny, personal symbol onto your work, a subtle message to anyone with eyes sharp enough to spot it. And if all else fails, just smile and say it's inspired by nature. No one ever argues with nature. Next comes music. Every concubine is expected to be able to pluck a lute, warble a tune, or at least keep time by clapping quietly. The lute, beloved by princes and nobles, is less beloved by your tender fingers, which are quickly reduced to calluses. You practice scales until your ears ring, and your teacher, a courtier with the patience of a saint and the eyebrows of a villain, nods in grim approval. Occasionally you'll be called upon to perform at a moment's notice, which is why you spend half your life rehearsing the Song of the Rose and the other half praying you don't accidentally start singing the version with the rude lyrics. Poetry is another staple. You're taught to read it, recite it, and even write a few verses if you're feeling especially daring. The palace likes its poetry flowery, emotional, and just vague enough to avoid open scandal. You memorize stanzas about love, loyalty, and heartbreak, and practice reciting them with the appropriate sighs and meaningful glances. Secretly, you compose darker lines about overcooked mutton and missing slippers, but those stay hidden in your head. Poetry is a safe way to vent, provided no one ever finds your notes. Art lessons, dance practice, and the occasional strategy game round out the day. Dancing is a favorite. It's all about poise, posture, and looking like you aren't 2 steps away from falling asleep on your feet. A misstep here can be disastrous, not just for your reputation but for your toes, which may never recover from Lady Sabine's accidental enthusiasm. Meanwhile, chess and cards let you practice strategy, perfect for when you need to outwit a rival or survive the next round of palace politics. Of course, not all pastimes are for show. There's a lot of sitting in window alcoves pretending to read, looking dreamy while actually scanning the gardens for signs of escape. Some concubines take up sketching or weaving. Others cultivate tiny herb gardens in secret pots. Anything to pass the time and feel just a bit more human. Through it all, you master the art of appearing serene. You nod along to the music, smile at a clever rhyme, and pull your needle through silk while your mind races with worries and wild plans. Idle hands may be the devil's workshop, but in the palace, busy hands are the key to survival, and sometimes the only thing keeping you from unraveling entirely. Every gesture is loaded. The way you bow, the way you sip, the way you breathe, any of it can offend someone, somewhere, with more power than you. It's like playing chess with all the pieces stacked against you. Mornings in the palace start with a test you didn't study for. Etiquette. Before you even take a sip of thin, lukewarm tea, you've already run a gauntlet of rules that feels suspiciously like traps. Your back must be straight but not stiff, your nods deferential but not desperate, and your smile just the right amount of mysterious. If you bow too low, you'll be accused of mockery. Not low enough, and suddenly you're getting ideas above your station. No pressure. The etiquette instructor, who somehow manages to glide rather than walk, stands ready to catch the slightest error. She corrects your posture with a tap of her fan, raises her eyebrows when you speak too soon, and sighs audibly if you dare to reach for bread before the highest-ranking guest. Always let the important people eat first, she reminds you, and by important, I mean everyone but you. You wonder if she's ever smiled, or if her mouth is permanently fixed in a state of disappointment. Then there's the business of greetings. Each guest at court has their own preferred form of address, which means you need to memorize half the genealogy of the nobility just to avoid calling a baron a viscount, or worse, using a first name. If you make a mistake, you're given a look so cold it could chill the wine, followed by whispered tittering from the ladies-in-waiting. If you get it right, you're ignored. Success is its own, silent reward. Table manners are a daily ordeal. There are rules for how to hold a knife, how to use a spoon, and what to do if a bit of food goes rogue. Spoiler: if you drop anything, you must act as though nothing happened, even if a turnip lands in your lap. If a duke asks for the salt, you pass it with both hands and avoid eye contact, as though he's a dangerous animal who might bite. Drinking is a whole separate test. Don't slurp, don't gulp, don't sip too delicately. If you make a noise, you're crude. If you're too quiet, you're probably plotting something. Apparently, hydration is for the confident and politically neutral. Conversation is the biggest minefield. You must be witty, but not too witty. Humble, but not pathetic. If you're asked a question, answer politely, and don't let your gaze linger on anyone's jewelry for too long, unless you want rumors of sticky fingers. If the conversation drifts to politics, history, or the price of velvet, you're expected to have opinions, just not controversial ones. The safest answer to any question is a thoughtful, "How interesting," followed by a gentle smile and an immediate change of subject to the weather, embroidery, or someone else's dog. You quickly realize that even your silence speaks volumes. The wrong kind of quiet makes you look sullen or arrogant. Too much laughter is unseemly. If you yawn, you're disrespectful. If you look bored, you might as well start packing for the nearest nunnery. You develop a repertoire of non-committal noises, oh, indeed, that you can deploy at will regardless of whether you're actually listening. The absolute worst scenario is the surprise arrival of an important guest. Suddenly, you're scrambling to remember which side of the room to stand on, how many steps to take before curtsying, and whether or not you're supposed to kiss a ring, a hand, or the air itself. You copy what the others do, praying you've chosen the right person to imitate. By noon, you're exhausted and you haven't even made it to the second course. Every gesture, every word, every breath is a balancing act. It's etiquette as an endurance sport, a game you can never fully win, only hope to survive with minimal bruising to your ego and your status. If you make it through without accidentally declaring war or insulting a cousin twice removed, you reward yourself with a secret, triumphant sigh, and perhaps a bite of bread. Assuming the etiquette instructor isn't watching, if you're lucky, a letter arrives from home. If you're very lucky, it doesn't make you cry. You try to remember who you were before all this started, and maybe, just for a minute, you let yourself miss your old life. Even if it was mostly goats and mud. The palace is a world of luxury and stress, but nothing can strip away the ache of homesickness like the arrival of a letter from your family. Letters don't arrive often. There are no reliable postal services here, just an endless relay of messengers, scribes, and the occasional bored monk with a talent for getting lost. Days, weeks, sometimes months pass between correspondences, so when a folded piece of parchment appears on your pillow, your heart thuds like you've just received a royal summons. You recognize the handwriting instantly. Clumsy, warm, more honest than anything else in the palace. Sometimes it's your mother, reminding you to eat more vegetables, as if you could. Sometimes it's a sibling, sending half-baked jokes and news about neighbors you'd nearly forgotten. Occasionally, you get a note from a childhood friend, full of gossip from a world that now feels as distant as a fairy tale. The first few lines are always the hardest. Your family updates you on births, deaths, and the general mood of the village, painting an idyllic scene of home that only grows more golden and blurry with every retelling. There's always mention of the goats, the same ones who used to chew your cloak and chase chickens through the mud. Your mother will swear that things are much the same as ever, which is code for we're struggling, but we don't want to worry you. You read between the lines, picking out hints of hardship and hints of hope, wishing you could do more than send the occasional coin or trinket. The hardest part is realizing how much you've changed. You've learned to sit straighter, speak softer, and hide your real thoughts behind layers of courtly manners and polite smiles. You wonder if the person they write to, the daughter or sister they remember, is the same one reading the letter now. Sometimes, you tuck the parchment into your sleeve and slip away to a quiet corner, rereading familiar lines until the words blur, and you're forced to dab at your eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief you would never have owned back home. You write back when you can, though your replies are edited for safety and appearances. The truth about palace life, the politics, the rivalries, the constant threat of scandal is something you can't put into words. So you choose your stories carefully. A funny mishap in the kitchen, the beauty of the rose garden, the excitement of a royal festival. You tell them about the dresses and the music, about how the palace is grand and full of interesting people, even if most of those people would happily trade you for a slightly more fashionable rival. Sometimes you're tempted to tell them everything. The moments of fear, the loneliness, the exhaustion of pretending all the time, but you spare them the details, editing your own life story into something bearable. You reassure them that you're safe, that you're happy, that you're making friends. You add a line about how much you miss the goats, which, if you're honest, is mostly true. At least goats don't care if you spill soup on your dress. Even in the palace, news from home spreads. The other concubines gather after mail day, sharing snippets of their own letters, who's gotten engaged, who's lost a cow, who's finally patched the roof. It's an odd sort of comfort, knowing that no matter how far you've come, you're all still tied to another, humbler world. When you fold up the letter and tuck it under your pillow, you carry its warmth through the day. For a while, you let yourself remember the mud, the laughter, and the freedom of being unknown. And then you put on your mask, square your shoulders, and return to palace life, grateful for the brief reminder that somewhere you're still loved just for being you. The palace smells like incense, sweat, and last week's leftovers. Hygiene is more suggestion than standard, and every cough in the corridor is a reminder that luxury does not equal safety. Sure. From the outside, the royal court looks immaculate. Gilded halls, polished marble, peacocks strutting like scented throw pillows. But step inside, and you realize it's less spa retreat and more sneeze festival with extra frills. Behind every velvet curtain lurks a mystery draft, and beneath every shimmering tapestry, there's a layer of dust old enough to have its own opinions about court politics. Let's start with the basics. Bathing. You might get the occasional team sport bath, but daily washing, that's the stuff of fairy tales. Instead, you rely on perfumes, floral waters, and those little bundles of dried herbs tucked into your sleeves and undergarments. If you're lucky, the fragrance masks yesterday's sweat and not-so-subtle whiff of worry. If you're unlucky, you just smell like a desperate salad. The Queen's favourite perfume is so overpowering you can track her movements by scent alone, which is handy for avoiding a run-in, but less helpful when the stench lingers in your own room for hours. Sickness is everywhere, politely making its rounds like an overzealous hostess. If someone sneezes at breakfast, expect half the harem to be sniffling by dinner. The grandest risk is plague, a word everyone pretends not to say, but which hangs over every gathering like an ominous cloud of incense. You've seen the telltale signs before. Fever, shivering, and the kind of coughing fit that clears a room faster than the Queen's bad mood. When it comes, the palace goes into lockdown mode. No more social visits, no more shared hairbrushes, and definitely no more gossiping over communal grapes. Other ailments are equally at home here. Rashes from new fabrics, allergies from featherbeds, and an ongoing epidemic of mysterious itches. Bedbugs are the great equalizer. Rich, poor, or somewhere in between, everyone is scratching. Lice combs are traded like currency, and rumours about a miracle balm made from rosemary and vinegar sweep through the harem at least once a month. Most remedies are wishful thinking with a dash of creative marketing. Let's not forget about injuries. Royal life is filled with hazards. Slippery marble floors, heavy curtains that have ambitions of becoming tripping hazards, and the ever-present risk of being poked in the eye by someone's new feathered fan. A stubbed toe here, a twisted ankle there. By the end of the month, you're sporting enough bruises to start your own tapestry design, and heaven help you if you need actual medical attention. The palace physician's main tools are herbal compresses, stern prayers, and, if you're truly desperate, a leech or two. You're never quite sure whether you're being healed or slowly pickled. Food safety is theoretical. Sure, the kitchen produces dazzling feasts, but beneath the layers of cream and pastry lurks danger. Spoiled milk, undercooked poultry, and fruit that's just a little too fermented have sent more than one ambitious diner running for the nearest chamber pot. If you're clever, you stick to bread, cheese, and fruit that's definitely in season and not in the process of walking away on its own. And then, of course, there's mental health, a concept no one discusses, but everyone struggles with. Between sleepless nights, the constant vigilance, and the pressure to look healthy while secretly dodging mysterious illnesses, you become a connoisseur of palace remedies. Some swear by herbal teas, others by extended naps, and everyone agrees that avoiding the queen on her headache days is the best medicine of all. Despite the risks, you find yourself adapting. You develop a sixth sense for bad air. Keep your favorite herbal sachet tucked close, and learn to recognize a suspicious cough from 3 rooms away. With luck and a little rosewater, you make it through another day, proving that in the palace, survival is an art, and health is a constantly moving target, best chased with a sprig of lavender and a whole lot of luck. Someone's always jealous. Someone's always plotting, whether it's a poisoned cup or just a cruel rumor. Survival means outwitting people whose job is literally to be beautiful and dangerous. You'd think living in a palace full of pampered concubines would be a daily parade of glamorous gowns and polite conversation, but the reality is much more, let's call it, interactive. The air here practically vibrates with suspicion, especially when a new favorite rises through the ranks or when the queen's mood veers toward the volcanic. In the harem, jealousy is less of an emotion and more of a group activity, with each concubine quietly, or not so quietly, assessing everyone else's position, fashion sense, and the probability that she'll survive until next week's banquet. The intrigue starts small. A slightly snide comment about someone's hair, a mysterious, accidentally spilled drink on your new gown, or an innocent question about where you bought that lovely ribbon, followed, mysteriously, by all your ribbons disappearing the next morning. It builds from there. If you're clever, you learn to spot a trap before you step in it, to answer every question as if the walls themselves are taking notes, and to never, ever let your real feelings slip. Jealousy is everywhere, and it's relentless. Maybe the prince spends a moment too long admiring your embroidery. Instantly, you're marked as a threat by every ambitious soul in the room. Gifts and compliments become barbed. What a lovely dress. I could never pull off that color with my complexion. The trick is to accept these backhanded flattery attempts with grace, never rising to the bait. Sometimes it feels like everyone's speaking in code, and you're the only one who didn't get the dictionary. Of course, the intrigue isn't limited to words. Physical sabotage is practically an art form. Find a mysterious powder on your pillow? That's probably just ground iris root for good luck, or someone's subtle way of warning you to watch your back. Did your favorite cup suddenly vanish, only to reappear with a slightly metallic taste? Time to request a new set of dishes and reconsider your breakfast company. At least once, you'll catch a fellow concubine accidentally bumping your arm as you pass, hoping you'll drop that precious letter, or, better yet, make a scene in front of the wrong person. The danger isn't always physical, sometimes it's psychological. Rumors are the preferred weapon of choice. Whispered stories about secret lovers, forbidden letters, or missing jewels make their way from chamber to chamber. All it takes is one accusation, and suddenly you're on the defensive, forced to prove your innocence without knowing exactly what you've been accused of. Sometimes the worst part is never finding out who started the rumor. Other times, you know exactly who it was, and you're left to plot your revenge with a smile and an extra slice of cake at dessert. In this climate, real friendships are rare, and paranoia is standard issue. You learn to guard your words, your possessions, and sometimes even your dreams. The only way to survive is to be just unpredictable enough. Change your routine, move your things, keep your enemies guessing. Trust, if it exists at all, is doled out in crumbs and always watched by a dozen curious eyes. Yet, in a strange way, the constant intrigue becomes a twisted sort of entertainment. Who slipped a frog into the laundry basket? Who switched out the prince's favorite perfume for vinegar? Sometimes, you find yourself admiring the sheer creativity of your rivals. Other times, you're just exhausted. longing for a life where the only thing you have to fear is running out of bread. By the end of the day, if you've survived without becoming the subject of a scandal or the victim of an especially creative prank, you count it as a win. You hang your dress, lock your jewelry away, and try to sleep with one eye open, because in the harem, every compliment is a potential curse, and every friend could be tomorrow's biggest threat. Welcome to the palace, where backstabbing is both an art and a job requirement. You're here because someone important likes you. That's good for your status, and very, very bad for your blood pressure. The prince's affection is a weather vane. It turns with the wind, and you have to guess where the next storm is coming from. From the outside, being favored by the prince sounds like winning the lottery. Inside the palace, it's more like being handed a live grenade and told to smile for the portrait. His attention opens doors, more comfortable chambers, gifts of jewelry, and perhaps even a polite nod from the queen, if she's feeling generous. But it also puts you directly in the crosshairs of every ambitious courtier, jealous concubine, and scheming relative within 100 miles. Suddenly, you're not just a face in the crowd, you're the headline act, and the audience is equal parts supportive and carnivorous. The prince is, in theory, the reason you're here. In practice, his moods are as unpredictable as the palace weather. One day he's showering you with attention, poems scribbled in dubious Latin, midnight walks in the garden, a mysterious fruit from lands you've never heard of. The next, he's vanished entirely, off hunting or managing urgent affairs of state, leaving you to wonder if you somehow offended him by sneezing at the wrong moment. You learn to read the signs. If he sends your favorite pastries, it's a good day. If you get a tray of bland porridge, he's probably distracted by someone else's embroidery or someone else entirely. Public displays are a double-edged sword. When the prince chooses you to sit beside him at a banquet or asks you to dance first, it's a clear signal to everyone, you're in. But you can feel the daggers in every glance from the other concubines. Overnight, alliances shift, gossip multiplies, and the palace rumor mill works overtime trying to predict how long your luck will last. If you smile too much, you're labeled arrogant. If you don't smile enough, you're ungrateful. Somewhere, there's a perfect balance, but no one's ever managed to find it and survive. Private encounters come with their own set of challenges. You're expected to be witty but never outshine him. Charming but never too independent. Attentive but not clingy. Your life turns into a complicated dance of compliments, deference, and the occasional subtle hint that you can, in fact, play the lute if he asks one more time. You rehearse your smiles, your laughter, and even your sighs, hoping you're giving just the right performance for the audience of one who matters most. Meanwhile, the queen and the rest of the court are always watching. The queen might ignore you, or she might suddenly take an interest in your wardrobe, your table manners, or your taste in embroidery. Sometimes, she'll call you for a chat that's really an interrogation wrapped in velvet. The other concubines will offer advice, some helpful, most not, while secretly taking notes on your mistakes. The pressure is constant. Every glance from the prince could mean a new opportunity or a new disaster. Did he mean that as a compliment? Was that sigh disappointment, or just indigestion from the questionable oysters at last night's feast? You sleep with one ear open, listening for his footsteps, or the footsteps of someone sent to deliver bad news. And you're always wondering, what happens if his attention wanders? Will you be cast aside, or simply slip into the background until the next time he remembers your name? In quieter moments, you might find yourself wishing for a little less attention. After all, palace life is easier when no one's watching you too closely, when your mistakes can go unnoticed, and your breakfast can be eaten in peace. But that's not your reality, not as long as you're the object of royal interest. So you smile, you scheme, and you practice the art of balancing hope with self-preservation. The prince's attention is both a blessing and an occupational hazard, a golden ticket and a very sharp, double-edged sword. And you? You just try to keep your head attached and your reputation mostly intact, at least until the wind changes. Falling for someone else is, in a word, catastrophic. But sometimes you can't help it, and suddenly you're sneaking looks at a knight, a servant, or someone whose job is decidedly not concubine wrangler. Palace life is many things: lavish, tedious, and a touch ridiculous, but romantic is rarely one of them. Sure, the halls are filled with poetry, and the air is thick with incense, but most of the love stories here end with a dramatic sigh, an exile, or a very pointed warning from someone in authority. Still, hearts do as they please. And even in a place where every glance is monitored, you find yourself drawn to forbidden faces. Maybe it's the stable boy who always seems to be exactly where you're going, or the visiting knight who holds your gaze a split second longer than is strictly polite. It starts innocently enough. A smile across the courtyard, a brush of fingers while reaching for the same loot, maybe a too long conversation in the garden while you pretend to study the roses. At first, it feels harmless, a welcome distraction from the endless etiquette lessons and survival games of the harem. You savor the thrill of it, the way your stomach does a flip when your secret someone passes by, the whispered jokes you replay in your mind long after lights out. But palace walls have ears and eyes, and at least 2 busybody maids who live for this kind of scandal. Every interaction is risky. The Queen's spies love nothing more than catching concubines in unsanctioned flirtations, and the penalty for getting caught ranges from humiliating public lectures to, well, relocation to a distant convent, where the only forbidden love is with the bread oven. You learn to communicate in code, a pressed flower, a folded scrap of poetry, a glance that says more than a page of words. The stakes turn every moment into a secret mission. Soon, you realize how hard it is to keep a secret in a palace that runs on gossip. Every shared smile risks turning into tomorrow's headline. You can trust almost no one. The friend who swore to keep your secret may trade it for her own favor with the queen or the prince. You plan meetings with the precision of a military campaign, timing, location, and backup alibis. A stroll in the garden becomes a game of dodge the servants, and every shadow might hide a rival. The stress is real. Your sleep suffers, your nerves fray, and your just a little pale look is suddenly the talk of the breakfast table. All the while, you can't help but wonder if it's worth it. The thrill of being desired, the electric excitement of a shared secret, it makes the palace shimmer with possibility. But then comes the regret, creeping in on quiet evenings when you replay every moment, every word, and imagine how quickly it could all fall apart. Of course, it's not all doom and gloom. There are moments of pure joy. A secret letter slipped under your door, the warmth of a hand against yours for a heartbeat, the sweet ache of knowing you're not entirely alone. For a while, these moments are enough. But you know, deep down, that you're walking a tightrope stretched over a pit of social disaster. And then one day, it ends. Maybe someone finds out. Or maybe you simply can't bear the stress any longer. Maybe your secret love is sent away. Or maybe you're offered a chance at something safer, if not happier. You mourn the loss in private, bury your regrets beneath layers of silk and self-control, and remind yourself that in the palace, love is always a risk. Forbidden love, doubly so. But still, late at night, when the halls are quiet and your guard is down, you let yourself remember. You hold tight to those stolen moments, the secret smiles, the feeling that you were alive in a way the palace rarely allows. It may be regret, but it's yours, and no one can take that from you, not even the queen. If you bear a child, everything changes. Your status, your prospects, your level of anxiety. The palace turns into a maternity ward with no epidurals, no privacy, and a lot of people taking bets on the baby's hair color. For concubines, motherhood is both a ticket to potential security and a trapdoor into fresh layers of palace drama. At first, news of your pregnancy is treated as headline gossip, passed from chambermaid to footman, then dissected by every lady-in-waiting over breakfast. Suddenly, people who barely noticed you before are invested in your future, offering everything from well-meaning advice to unsolicited lectures about the merits of saffron tea. Some smile, some glare, and a few just stare at your belly with open calculation, as if they're trying to guess the odds on your child inheriting anything more than your nose. There's no escaping the attention. Your daily routine changes overnight. Gone are the days of carefree lute practice and sly flirting in the corridors. Now you're carted from one chamber to another, fussed over by a never-ending parade of midwives, noblewomen, and the odd physician whose best solution for morning sickness is a pungent mixture of honey, garlic, and prayer. If you're lucky, you get a private room and a slightly less lumpy mattress. If you're not, you're still sharing walls with the world's nosiest neighbors, who will hear every groan and mutter, then make up stories about the ones they miss. Privacy is a fantasy. Every stage of your pregnancy is public property. Handmaids whisper about your cravings. The prince's cousins keep a running tally of your mood swings. The queen, of course, pays extra attention, sometimes with warmth, more often with icy curiosity. Will your child be a rival for her own offspring? Will you get a promotion in the pecking order, or will you fade into the background after the novelty wears off? You try not to think about it, but the tension in the air is as thick as the morning porridge. When the time comes to give birth, you're surrounded by a crowd, midwives with hands rough from years of hard work, the palace healer clutching a handful of herbs, and at least 2 ladies-in-waiting whose only qualification is a knack for fainting at inopportune moments. There is no epidural, no sterile delivery room, and absolutely no privacy curtain. The whole thing is a chaotic performance, scored by prayers, shouts, and the occasional lecture from an older woman about how, in her day, labor was done by lunchtime. You grit your teeth and hold on, half hoping you'll live to tell the tale, half wishing everyone would just leave. After the birth, things don't get much easier. If you're lucky, the child is healthy, the gender is politically convenient, and the prince is pleased. You receive gifts, some genuine, some passive-aggressive, and a temporary bump in status. For a few precious weeks, you're fussed over. Your meals improve, your slippers are returned. Your enemies pretend to be your friends. You'd almost start to relax, if not for the lurking sense that everything could change in an instant. Because motherhood in the palace is a gamble. If your child thrives, you become a figure of importance, maybe even security. If not, if the child is sickly, or if something tragic happens, your hard-won place can vanish in a heartbeat. There are no guarantees. Some women rise in rank, others fade quietly into history, remembered only for a name in the margin of a family tree. Meanwhile, the baby becomes everyone's business. Bets are placed on which features are noble and which are suspiciously like your third cousin from the goat farm. You try to carve out moments of real motherhood in between all the public scrutiny, a gentle lullaby, a midnight feeding, a quiet promise that you'll protect your child, come what may. Motherhood is a double-edged sword. It can bring comfort or catastrophe, joy or jealousy. But as you rock your child to sleep, you know this much is true. For a brief moment in a world of shifting alliances, you are the center of someone's universe. And sometimes, that's enough to make even the palace feel like home. Gifts are the social currency. Sometimes you receive gold, jewels, or a suspiciously nice fruit basket. Sometimes you give gifts to the right servant, to the wrong official, or just to buy a day's peace. In the palace, nearly everything comes with a ribbon tied around it and a hidden expectation tucked inside. A necklace may mean thank you, or please put in a good word with the prince, or, less helpfully, don't mention last week's embarrassing incident in the rose garden. Every item exchanged is both a gesture of goodwill and a subtle power play. Knowing what to give, when to give it, and whom to give it to is an unofficial sport, a mix of chess, poker, and shopping under duress. Your first lesson in the palace gift economy usually comes quickly. Maybe it's a handmaid quietly sliding a comb across your table, whispering that it belonged to someone very important, and wouldn't you just love to try it out? Or perhaps a tray of sweetmeats appears outside your door, left by a rival concubine with a note so vague it could be anything from congratulations to an advance apology. You learn to accept graciously, to thank people warmly, and above all, to keep track of every gift, lest you accidentally re-gift it to the wrong person and trigger an etiquette meltdown. Of course, the art of giving is just as tricky as receiving. If you're generous, you're seen as trying too hard. If you're stingy, word spreads faster than a cold in winter. There's a delicate balance to strike. A timely present can smooth over a slight or grease the wheels of palace bureaucracy. You might slip a coin or two to the laundry maid to make sure your favourite veil is returned unscorched, or pass along a jar of honey to the cook for an extra helping of something edible. A bouquet for the Queen's Chamberlain on his birthday. A new scarf for a servant who's heard too much. Every gift is a strategic move. Sometimes, the line between present and bribe is so thin you could embroider on it. Want a little privacy for an afternoon nap? A basket of figs to the right official might do the trick. Need a rumour to die a quiet death? A gold ring left on the gossip's pillow is sometimes more effective than a threat. On feast days, everyone seems to remember your name, and your reputation for generosity is quietly measured, judged, and ranked. Even the prince is not above a little exchange of tokens, though his gifts tend to be more extravagant and occasionally bewildering. Who really wants a pet ferret wearing pearls? No one, that's who. And then there are the gifts that go missing. A brooch today, a silver cup tomorrow. Items seem to sprout legs and wander the halls, resurfacing weeks later in someone else's possession. The polite response is to pretend you never noticed, but every concubine has her own list of borrowed treasures she hopes will someday return. The truth is, losing a trinket here and there is just part of the cost of doing business in a world where possessions are fluid and nothing stays with one owner for long. Sometimes, gifts carry hidden risks. Accepting too much from a particular person can tie your fortunes together in ways you didn't expect or want. More than one ambitious concubine has been brought down by the wrong present at the wrong time. When rumors of favoritism or conspiracy fly, even a basket of apples can become Exhibit A. But despite the risks and headaches, the gift economy is the grease that keeps the palace gears moving. Small kindnesses buy small favors. Bigger gestures can change the course of a week, a season, or a life. You become adept at reading intentions, deciphering wrapping styles, and remembering who prefers honey to jam. Sometimes, the best gift is simply the right word at the right time, a gesture of sympathy, or a promise to keep a secret safe. At the end of the day, you stash your newest treasures in a locked chest, mentally noting who needs to be thanked, who needs to be repaid, and who just earned a little more of your trust or suspicion. In a world ruled by ambition and subtlety, gifts are less about generosity and more about survival. And you? You're just hoping your next fruit basket doesn't come with strings or spiders attached. You're expected to pray. You're also expected to look fabulous while praying. Religion is both comfort and weapon, and sometimes you're not sure which is scarier. Palace life is a theatre, and nowhere is this truer than in the chapel. You shuffle in at dawn, draped in your most pious-looking veil, and take your place on a hard wooden bench between two rivals who smell faintly of lavender, ambition, and last night's garlic stew. Here, the rules of devotion are clear. Sit up straight, keep your eyes lowered, and time your sighs of longing for divine intervention with the skill of a professional actress. If you can manage to look like you're on the verge of saintly tears without smudging your eyeliner, you're winning. Daily prayers are compulsory, regardless of your personal beliefs or level of enthusiasm. Some mornings you recite the litany with real feeling, especially if you're worried about a looming scandal or the Queen's mood. Other times, you mumble the words while silently counting how many tiles are cracked in the floor. Either way, missing prayers is not an option. Absence is noticed, logged, and almost always reported back to someone who will make you regret it. The palace's grapevine is only slightly less powerful than the saints themselves. Religious observances are a social event in their own right. Major feast days mean pageantry, processions, singing, candlelight, and an endless parade of relics, banners, and incense, strong enough to make even the toughest knight sneeze. You're expected to sing hymns in tune, walk with dignity, and, ideally, not faint during the 2-hour sermon. Some concubines claim to have fainted purely for dramatic effect, just to be carried out by a handsome squire. You suspect they're telling the truth. But beneath all the rituals and ceremony, religion is also a language of status and power. The queen's piety is legendary, and the closer you align yourself with her spiritual habits, the safer you are, or so you hope. If she kneels for a full hour, you kneel for an hour and 5 minutes. If she donates to a convent, you send a matching basket of apples and your heartfelt prayers. Of course, if you're seen as too eager, you risk accusations of hypocrisy. It's a tightrope. Be devout, but not so devout that you seem competitive. Confession is another minefield. You're expected to unburden your soul to the palace priest, a man whose memory is as sharp as his sermons are long. You edit your list of sins carefully. A little envy here, a touch of pride there, but nothing that could start a real scandal. The priest never comments, but the glint in his eye suggests he knows more than you're telling. You wonder how many secrets are safely locked behind the confessional's wooden screen, and how many have mysteriously made their way into the Queen's next round of pointed questions. For some, faith is a real comfort. You find solace in the quiet hush of the chapel at dusk, when the world is reduced to candlelight, whispers, and the slow, steady rhythm of your own breath. Here, you can pray for your family, for strength, or just for a day, with fewer disasters. For others, religion is a performance, another way to climb the ladder, or to hide behind a reputation for saintliness that is, frankly, about as reliable as the palace plumbing. And then there's the fear. In a world where every misstep might be judged both by your peers and by the Almighty, superstition thrives. You wear amulets, collect holy water, and tuck a tiny relic into your pillow for protection. Some concubines are said to visit fortune tellers or scribble secret prayers on scraps of linen, just in case the saints are busy elsewhere. Ultimately, spiritual life in the palace is a test of endurance. You pray for forgiveness, you pray for favor, and you pray, endlessly, silently, that tomorrow you won't be the next cautionary tale in a sermon. Saints, sinners, and everyone in between. In the palace, a little faith is essential, but never forget that a perfectly timed Hail Mary and an excellent veil can be equally powerful. One day you're the center of attention. The next, your background scenery. How do you handle fading into obscurity when your whole life has been built on being noticed? Palace life, for all its silks and gold thread, is really just a revolving door of popularity contests. If you're the favorite, chosen, admired, the focus of the prince's wandering eye, you get the softest cushions, the choicest fruit, and the feeling that every whisper is about you, which it probably is. But the climb to the top is nothing compared to the long, slow slide down. Because in the royal court, favorite is just another way of saying next in line for heartbreak. The warning signs are subtle at first. Your invitations arrive a little later than usual. Your seat at breakfast is a few spots further from the fireplace. The prince, once so attentive, starts mentioning other names, first in passing, then with a kind of absent-minded fondness. Suddenly, the handmaids don't bother fluffing your pillow twice. The palace cats stop visiting your window. Even the gossip about you gets a little less vicious, as if people are moving on to fresher targets. It's tempting to fight against the tide. Brighter ribbons, bolder perfumes, louder laughter at the prince's jokes. But you soon realize this only makes the fade more noticeable. The palace is a place that worships novelty. The next big thing is always waiting in the wings, rehearsing her smile, practicing her curtsy, and borrowing your best lines. No matter how much you reinvent yourself, the current keeps pulling you toward the background. Your rivals, once politely hostile, grow emboldened. They offer you unsolicited advice about embracing simplicity. Some are almost kind, as if sensing the shift and eager to show they're not as cutthroat as everyone thinks. Others are openly gleeful. One or two suddenly remember your birthday and send you odd little gifts. A wilted bouquet, a leftover cake, a mysterious powder for brightening your complexion. You thank them anyway. Pride is the first thing you have to let go. The real sting comes from the loss of small privileges you didn't know you cared about. The best cushion at prayers? Gone. Your favorite slippers? Mysteriously claimed by someone else. The kitchen maid, who used to save you honey pastries, now shrugs and says they ran out. Each tiny loss is a reminder of how quickly favor fades and how little you can do to stop it. What's left, then, is acceptance. Some days it's easy. You slip into a quiet rhythm, free from the exhausting effort of constant performance. You have more time for your embroidery, or you discover a hidden window seat where you can read without interruption. Other days, you ache for the old attention, the laughter, the adoration, the knowledge that you mattered. You watch as new favorites rise, see the same cycle play out with different faces and fancier dresses. You recognize the nervous excitement in their eyes, the careful choreography of their courtship with power. Sometimes you catch them watching you, perhaps wondering if you're bitter or relieved. The truth is, it's a little of both. The palace is a machine that runs on admiration and envy, and nobody stays at the top forever. In the end, there's a quiet dignity in fading gracefully. You make yourself useful in other ways, offering advice, helping the next nervous girl avoid your old mistakes, even laughing at yourself when the occasion calls for it. You learn to take pride in small victories, a good night's sleep, a letter from home, a perfect rose in the garden that no one else notices. Obscurity is not the end, it's a new role in the never-ending play. You may not be the favorite anymore, but you're still here, still watching, still surviving. And who knows? In a place where fortunes turn on a whim, a background character today could be tomorrow's unlikely heroine. For now, you slip quietly into the background, grateful for the lessons you've learned, and ready for whatever comes next. Falling out of favor isn't just bad for your mood, it's a one-way ticket out the door. Sometimes it's a gentle exile, sometimes it's a pack your things and don't stop running kind of situation. In the palace, every smile hides a threat, every compliment carries a warning, and every day could be your last in these gilded halls. You might survive the awkward breakfasts and the etiquette nightmares, but the risk of exile is always lurking just behind the heavy velvet drapes. One wrong word, one glance held too long, or one rumor spreading too far, and suddenly you're invited to take a sabbatical at some distant, drafty estate. And the palace does love a euphemism. Exile can mean anything from a polite retirement with a modest allowance to a hasty midnight escape through the servants' entrance, clutching your last unstolen hairpin. You hear about it happening to others, first as whispers, then as cautionary tales. Remember Lady Cecile? One day she was everyone's favourite at the midsummer dance. Next, her rooms were empty, and the only thing left behind was a half-finished scarf and a very confused cat. No one knows exactly why or how. Sometimes the Queen's mood shifts like a storm cloud, or the Prince's attention is suddenly elsewhere. Maybe a foreign ambassador complained, or maybe someone in the kitchen's got just a little too chatty. When it's your turn, the signs are subtle. Invitations dry up. Your seat is moved to the edge of the table. Conversations hush as you approach. The servants look at you with a mixture of pity and panic. No one wants to be caught helping the soon-to-be-gone. You check your jewelry box twice a day, just in case someone decides to help with the packing before you even know you're leaving. If you're lucky, you get time to say goodbye. A gentle exile means a few days' notice, a farewell supper with bland well wishes, and a cart to take you and your battered trunk to a modest country manor. You're told it's for your health, your peace of mind, or the prince's deep regret. Translation: don't come back, don't write, and definitely don't start a scandal. You're expected to disappear gracefully, your story fading into palace legend, right alongside the missing tapestry and the time someone tried to smuggle a goat into the Queen's chambers. But not everyone gets the gentle treatment. Sometimes, exile is a fast-moving shadow. You're roused in the middle of the night, given just enough time to grab your essentials, a comb, a few letters, maybe that half-eaten roll from dinner, and hurried out the side door before anyone else can notice. No one risks being seen with you. Every hurried footstep echoes with fear that you might be seen as an accomplice. You travel by moonlight, hoping you're headed somewhere with an actual roof and not just a new set of enemies. For many, exile is less a punishment than an erasure. Your name is omitted from records, your belongings quietly redistributed, and within weeks, new faces fill your old spaces as if you'd never been there at all. Sometimes, you wonder if it would be better to go in style, a dramatic speech, a grand exit, one last act of defiance. But the palace prefers silence. Scandal is only fun when it happens to someone else. On the rare occasion that you hear from a former concubine, the letters are coded, vague, and a little sad. They write about gardens, weather, and memories of palace life, as if it all happened in another lifetime. Some thrive in exile, relishing the quiet and the chance to reinvent themselves. Others spend years looking over their shoulders, jumping at every unfamiliar face in the village square. The risk of exile is a shadow over every meal, every conversation, every quiet night. You keep your best treasures hidden, your goodbye speech ready, and your heart guarded. In the palace, everyone's just one scandal away from packing light. For the last time. Sometimes you're not sure who you're sleeping with, figuratively or literally. The palace is full of spies, informers, and people who look at you like they know a secret. In a place where gossip spreads faster than the common cold, trust is a precious commodity and paranoia is practically a job requirement. The royal court is a living organism, all nerves and whispers, and you're stuck right in the middle. Everyone has an agenda. The prince, the queen, the lowest kitchen scullion. Everyone wants something, and sometimes that something is just to know more than you do. Your days are punctuated by subtle, suspicious encounters. That friendly maid who lingers to adjust your hair, she's just as likely reporting your every word to someone higher up as she is admiring your new braid. The nobleman who accidentally drops by your window every morning, he's collecting intelligence, not flowers. Even your own friends may be double agents, loyal to you until the stakes change and they need to secure their own place in the palace hierarchy. Spies come in all shapes and sizes, and their methods are both creative and unnerving. Letters vanish, only to return a day later with the seal oddly smudged. Your slippers are never where you left them. Sometimes a cup of wine appears at your bedside, tasting ever so slightly of something unfamiliar, enough to make you wonder whether the real game is chess or Russian roulette. The lines between eavesdropping, spying, and simple curiosity blur quickly. If you want to survive, you learn to play along, letting a few secrets slip while keeping your most important truths tucked away, where even you can barely find them. Scandals are the natural byproduct of this environment, and the palace loves nothing more than a good one. A dropped handkerchief in the wrong chamber, a half-overheard conversation, a visit from the court physician at an unusual hour, any of these can become the seed of a scandal that flowers overnight. One minute you're enjoying a quiet afternoon, the next you're the talk of the palace, your reputation shredded before you even realize what rumor you're supposed to deny. Then come the surprise inspections. Sometimes, the queen or her most trusted advisor decides it's time for a little house cleaning. Your room is searched, ostensibly for contraband, but really for letters, gifts, or any sign of alliances you're not supposed to have. It's a test of nerves and a masterclass in acting innocent. You learn to keep your belongings organized, your letters coded, and your secrets written in a language only you can decipher. Anything incriminating is hidden in the last place anyone would look, the hollowed-out foot of your least fashionable shoe, or behind the tapestry featuring that particularly unattractive hunting dog. Through it all, you become an expert in plausible deniability. Every word you speak is carefully chosen, every relationship maintained with one eye on the exits. You befriend the queen's spies, offer a smile to the prince's informers, and even the lowliest kitchen maid gets a kind word, just in case she's more than she seems. You adopt the art of selective honesty, sharing just enough truth to seem trustworthy and just enough lies to protect yourself. The strange part? After a while, the tension becomes routine. You wake up expecting surprises, learning to savor the moments when things are merely suspicious, not catastrophic. And every so often, you find yourself playing the game, dropping a rumor here, planting a bit of misinformation there, just to see what comes back. It's survival, but it's also a strange, twisted kind of entertainment. At the end of the day, the palace is less a home and more a stage. Everyone plays a role, and yours just happens to come with more secret handshakes than most. You sleep with one eye open, your alliance is loose, and your wits sharper than ever. Because here, dangerous liaisons are a fact of life. And the only person you can truly trust is the one in the mirror, and even she's keeping secrets. What happens when you get old? If you're lucky, you retire somewhere with a window and maybe a cat. If you're unlucky, you disappear and nobody asks questions. Career isn't really the word. In the palace, planning for your future is a lot like planning a surprise party for someone who may or may not want you around. There's no pension plan, no congratulatory banquet, and certainly no gold watch for years of loyal service. Instead, your retirement is decided by a mix of luck, royal favor, and your uncanny ability to avoid scandal and infectious disease. It's less career trajectory, and more try not to get flung from the royal carousel. Your first warning that you're aging out of palace life comes gradually. The prince's attention drifts to younger faces. The queen stops monitoring your wardrobe choices so closely, partly because you're less competition, and partly because you've just started recycling the same 6 dresses out of spite. The ambitious new concubines refer to you as Madame, with the kind of respect that doubles as an insult. And you start getting seated closer and closer to the drafty end of the banquet hall, the place unofficially reserved for former favorites, distant cousins, and people who've outlasted their usefulness. There are a few well-known options for what comes next, and none of them appear in the official tour brochure. Option 1. A quiet retirement at a country estate. If you're very fortunate and kept your nose clean, you might be given a modest property, some household staff, and a small income. You're expected to spend your days writing letters, managing chickens, and reminiscing about your glory days while becoming local legend for your unusual stories. Cats are almost a requirement, as is talking to yourself while tending the herb garden. If you're especially clever, you turn your estate into a hotspot for former courtiers and keep the palace gossip alive from a safe distance. Option 2. The convent, the classic catch. All for women the palace isn't quite sure what to do with. Life in a convent isn't terrible, plenty of bread, lots of prayers, and enough routine to make your palace years look like a fever dream. You might even find a little peace there, away from royal politics and underhanded gift-giving. Plus, there's something comforting about knowing exactly when your next meal is coming and that nobody is going to poison it. Option 3 is less glamorous. Fade quietly into obscurity. Sometimes this means moving in with distant relatives, becoming the mysterious aunt who always has good stories and slightly unorthodox advice about getting stains out of silk. Other times, it's even quieter. No one really knows where you went, and the palace certainly doesn't advertise your absence. A handful of women vanish so thoroughly that future generations assume they were figments of someone's overactive imagination. The reality is, retirement for a concubine is as much about survival as anything else. If you've played your cards right, you retire with enough dignity and gossip to keep yourself entertained. You might even be called back for special occasions. A wedding, a christening, or to scare the latest round of hopefuls straight with tales of the Queen's worst tantrums. Your value shifts from potential favourite to living reminder that nobody lasts forever. There are small consolations. You develop an appreciation for fresh air, quiet evenings, and the luxury of eating without an audience. Maybe you adopt a few strays. both human and feline, and finally write down your side of the story, just in case anyone cares in a century or two. And if you're truly wise, you take pride in having outlasted a world that runs on youth and intrigue, knowing that survival is its own form of success. So, when your time comes, you pack your favorite shawl, your best secrets, and a little box of letters from home. You leave the palace with your head high, even if your back aches, and you savor every sunrise in a life that's finally, mercifully yours alone. And if anyone calls you Madame, you take it as a compliment, because you've earned it, window seat and all. When you're gone, what's left? Sometimes it's a famous child, a whispered scandal, or a footnote in a chronicle written by a monk who never met you. The impact is real, but the credit, well, that always goes to someone else. In the grand scheme of things, palace concubines are the invisible architects of history. Your name might not be carved into marble, and your portrait may never hang in a gilded frame, but your fingerprints are everywhere if you know where to look. Kingdoms rise and fall because of whispered words in candlelit chambers. Alliances are forged and broken over late-night confessions, and the fate of dynasties is often sealed by choices made behind the heavy velvet curtains of your rooms. Of course, when the chroniclers finally get around to writing it all down, your name will be replaced with a certain lady or an unknown favorite. If you're lucky, you're remembered as the mother of Prince so-and-so, with your own story left out to keep the official record tidy. The men in power get the credit. You get the cautionary tale. Still, you know the truth. History was changed by women like you. One well-timed word, one raised eyebrow, or one perfectly executed bout of silent resistance at a time. Take, for example, the not-so-small matter of children. Many concubines bore future rulers, sometimes openly, sometimes in the margins of the family tree, names blotted out or rewritten to fit the preferred version of events. The most powerful princes and princesses were often shaped by mothers who had learned to survive the impossible, who taught them cunning, patience, and the importance of never trusting anyone with access to the household breadbasket. Even when you didn't become a mother, your influence rippled through the palace. Maybe you were the one who brokered a fragile peace between squabbling nobles, or cleverly prevented a war by convincing the prince to just sleep on it instead of charging into battle. Maybe you were the secret patron of an artist, a poet, or a garden that would be famous long after your name was lost to gossip. Or maybe you were the spark behind a legendary scandal, your only crime being in the wrong place at the wrong time, with the wrong smile on your face. And what of the stories told after you're gone? Some are wild exaggerations, some are careful erasures, and some are quietly handed down from one generation of palace women to the next. You become a legend, a warning, a half-remembered ghost. The new concubines might whisper about you as they get ready in the mornings. She's the one who stole the prince's heart, or she's the reason we're not allowed near the wine cellar after sunset. In the end, your real life becomes palace folklore, your struggles and triumphs woven into a fabric that's always just out of reach. What little credit does make it into the records is usually accidental. A monk mentions your remarkable wisdom or unusual courage while mostly writing about someone else. An artist paints your likeness into the background of a great scene, never mentioning that you were the one who arranged for the king and queen to make up after their third dramatic spat of the month. If you're truly fortunate, your descendants quietly honor your legacy, telling your story around the fire long after the palace has moved on to new scandals and fresher faces. In the end, you accept that you won't be remembered as a hero, but you might just be remembered. You played the game, survived the palace, and changed the course of history in ways no one will ever fully admit. Your name may not be in the chronicles, but your spirit lingers in the sly smiles of clever women, in the peace bought by a well-placed word, in the knowledge that you mattered, even if the world chose not to notice. And maybe, just maybe, the next time someone reads the official story, they'll wonder about the unnamed women who shaped it all. After all, legends start somewhere, And sometimes they start with you. Dinner is served, and so is your anxiety. Sharing a meal with royalty means sitting up straight, smiling politely, and pretending you're not being watched by a dozen pairs of judgmental eyes. Every bite is a performance, and dropping your spoon is basically a social crisis. Let's be clear, meals in the palace are nothing like cozy family dinners or casual brunches with friends. The moment you step into the royal dining hall, the atmosphere shifts. It's as if every candle is an interrogator's lamp, and every server is a silent observer. The table stretches endlessly, loaded with platters you may or may not get to sample, depending on your current status in the pecking order. The queen sits at one end, regal and inscrutable, while the prince holds court somewhere in the middle, surrounded by admirers, enemies, and people who aren't quite sure which they are today. Your first challenge is where to sit. Seating is a science, a test of social rank, current favor, and whether you've accidentally insulted the wrong person this week. If you're lucky, you're close enough to the action to hear the juiciest gossip and maybe even score a second helping of roasted game. If you're unlucky, you're so far down the table that the only thing left is the vegetable mush, and the seat is alarmingly drafty. Once seated, you become hyper-aware of your every move. The cutlery, sometimes gold, sometimes just a suspiciously shiny bronze, is both tool and trap. You try to remember which fork to use for the salad, if there even is a salad, which spoon is for the soup, and when, if ever, you're allowed to use your hands. Woe betide anyone who grabs the wrong utensil. Even the softest faux pas can ripple down the table faster than a rumor about the prince's new special friend. Conversation is as carefully choreographed as a royal dance. There's an unspoken expectation to join in, but not too much. You must laugh at the king's jokes, even if they involve puns about pickled herring. Agree with the queen's opinions on fashion, and feign interest in Lord Geoffrey's fifth retelling of how he almost caught a fox that one time. Interrupt the wrong person, and you'll find yourself frozen out for a week. Stay too quiet, and everyone assumes you're sulking or plotting. And then there's the food itself. The palace prides itself on elaborate meals, whole roast swans, pies with more layers than palace intrigue, fruit tarts the size of small dogs. If you're at the top of the food chain, you get first pick. If not, you hope the stew is still warm when it gets to you. Every bite must be taken with grace. Chew quietly, swallow demurely, and never, never let a crumb escape your lips. The memory of Lady Eleanor dropping her spoon last month and the week of snide comments that followed is a warning to you all. As the meal stretches on, the scrutiny never lets up. The Queen's gaze is sharp, assessing every gesture, every whisper. The Prince alternates between charming and distracted, and the rest of the court performs their own little dramas, angling for attention and favour. You can feel the tension in your shoulders, in the stiffness of your back, in the way your hands tremble ever so slightly as you raise your cup. Finally, when dessert arrives, you breathe a silent sigh of relief, if only because the end is near. The final hurdle, the toasts. Don't spill, don't choke. And whatever you do, don't make eye contact with the person who's spent the entire meal staring daggers at you from 3 seats away. When at last you're dismissed, you leave the table as gracefully as you arrived, resisting the urge to sprint for the nearest exit. You survived another royal meal, a feat in itself. As you step into the corridor, your stomach may be half empty, but at least your reputation is still mostly intact. And in the palace, that's what really counts. Not all gifts are created equal. Sometimes, a noble suitor sends you pearls or perfumed letters. Sometimes, you get an actual dead pheasant or a basket of apples that's suspiciously missing too. Accepting a gift is political. Refusing a gift is dangerous. Feigning gratitude is your only superpower. The palace is a perpetual marketplace of affection, alliances, and attempted flattery, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the gifts you receive. Every morning is a new round of surprise packages, each one promising excitement and anxiety in equal measure. Is that silver brooch a token of genuine admiration or a bribe for future gossip? Is the poem from the charming count meant to flatter your wit or test your loyalty to the prince? Is that wilted bouquet a heartfelt gesture or a not-so-subtle warning from a rival? You weigh every gift in your hands, trying to read the invisible message wrapped between the ribbons. The most desirable presents, jewels, fine cloth, imported sweets, are almost never given without strings attached. A string of pearls could come from the prince himself, a clear and very public signal of favor, but also an invitation for every jealous eye in the palace to track your every move. Accepting means stepping into a minefield of gossip and rivalry. Refusing is impossible without offending someone important. The solution? Smile graciously, wear the pearls at just the right moment, and pretend not to notice the sudden frost from your fellow concubines. Then there are the literary gifts. At least once a month, some lovesick noble attempts to win your heart, or more likely, your influence, with a poem so overwrought that you suspect the quill itself collapsed from exhaustion. You receive odes comparing your eyes to sapphires, your hair to spun gold, your patience to the patience of a saint, which, considering the court's antics, is arguably the most accurate compliment. You develop a diplomatic skill for replying. Your words are too kind, you say, while mentally composing your own verses about how your patience is running out. But not every present is so refined. Sometimes, a basket arrives containing what is best described as farm fresh, meaning half a dozen eggs, a wheel of cheese, and, once, a live chicken who was clearly as surprised as you to find herself in royal company. The most legendary was the dead pheasant, tied with a ribbon and accompanied by a note. To the fairest in the palace may your table always be bountiful. The cook was thrilled, you slightly less so. And let's not forget the edible gifts. Fruit is always appreciated, unless of course it's obviously been sampled already. I thought you'd like the rest, the note might say, as if a basket of apples with two missing is some ancient symbol of friendship. Chocolates, when they appear, are treasures. Unfortunately, you're wise enough never to eat anything until you've seen the Queen's taster try it first. Each gift requires a performance. Feigning gratitude, you accept every trinket and token with a smile that reveals nothing. You write thank you notes, laced with compliments, careful never to imply obligation or, worse, personal preference. Sometimes, when you're truly at a loss, you gift the item forward, ensuring that what goes around comes around, hopefully with less poultry. But the risks are always present. Accept a gift from the wrong person, and you're suddenly entangled in someone else's scheme. Refuse a present, and you risk public offense or, more insidiously, the whisper campaign that you're ungrateful, or, worse, plotting. Navigating this economy of gifts is a game of survival. You must look pleased but not greedy, grateful but not desperate, open to affection but not so open that the prince gets jealous. So, you tuck away the pearls, nibble carefully on the candied plums, and send a polite thank you for the poetry. No, really, you loved the rhyme about your celestial glow. And when you open a box and find yet another dead bird, you just nod, summon the cook, and remind yourself that in the palace, every present is a puzzle, and your job is to look delighted while solving it. Every so often, someone decides you look a little peaky. Cue the arrival of the palace physician, who prescribes treatments ranging from herbal teas to a handful of leeches and something bubbling in a jar that smells like feet. You pretend to be grateful, and try not to pass out. It's a universal truth in palace life. The moment your skin turns a shade less than radiant, the court's resident health experts appear like well-dressed vultures circling a fainting goat. Whether you're suffering from a real ailment or just caught yawning at the wrong moment, you're quickly subjected to the medieval wellness program, a collection of treatments that range from vaguely sensible to outright alarming. First, the leeches. They arrive in a little wooden box, squirming in a puddle of muddy water, accompanied by a physician with suspiciously enthusiastic eyebrows. The theory, apparently, is that all your problems, headaches, stress, existential dread, can be solved by a few well-placed leeches draining your bad humors. You try to smile politely as they attach to your arm, reminding yourself not to faint at the sight of your own blood being used for palace recycling. The physician assures you it's all perfectly safe. And besides, the Queen herself had leeches last week. It's the latest trend. If you manage to survive leech therapy, next comes the potion round. The palace physician is forever brewing up something in his apothecary, and each batch smells more questionable than the last. You're handed a cup of liquid, the colour of old pond water, with floating bits that may or may not once have been plant life. It's good for vitality, he insists. You close your eyes, hold your breath, and sip, hoping that whatever's floating isn't looking back at you. Side effects may include dizziness, sweating, and a sudden urge to confess your deepest secrets to the chamber pot. Herbal teas are the least terrifying option, unless you count the time Lady Juliet's calming tisane turned out to be half stinging nettle and half whatever was growing behind the stables. Some teas are supposed to help you sleep, others to make you radiant, and a few, according to rumour, are more likely to have you singing love songs to the laundry baskets by dusk. You sip anyway, because in the palace, refusing a remedy is almost as scandalous as needing one. Then there's the real adventure, the hallucinogenic herbs. These are reserved for special cases, which generally means anyone who's complained too much about headaches, heartbreak, or Lady Sabine's singing. A pinch of the wrong thing in your evening stew, and suddenly you're convinced the prince's favourite hunting dog is reciting poetry. You learn to recognise the telltale signs, a peculiar aftertaste, a tingly tongue, a sudden desire to write epic verse about the glory of cheese. The physicians call it a spiritual journey. You call it Tuesday. Recovery from these treatments is a process in itself. After the leeches and potions, you're bundled up and sent to rest, which usually means lying very still while the other concubines debate whether you'll ever recover your original colouring. Some offer sympathetic looks. Others bring you honeyed biscuits, mostly to see if you'll eat them. The Queen's favourite remedy is a brisk walk in the garden, but you suspect that's just an excuse to spy on the gardeners. In the end, you accept your fate. The wellness treatments may be dubious, but they're a palace tradition, equal parts medicine, ritual, and social performance. You learn to feign gratitude, perfect the art of not gagging at suspicious brews, and develop a handy line for future reference. Thank you, my lady. I feel so much better already, even if you're still seeing double. So the next time someone declares you look a little off, you brace yourself for another round of leeches, potions, and questionable teas. And you remind yourself, in the harem, staying healthy is an achievement, but pretending to enjoy the process is a downright art form. And so, as our night in the palace draws to a close, let's take a slow, deep breath and remember everything you survived without even having to move from bed. You faced the chill of royal paranoia, the awkward silence of 1,000 judgmental glances, and the kind of beauty routine that would terrify a modern dermatologist. You navigated etiquette like a medieval ninja, outwitted rivals with nothing but a half-hearted compliment and a raised eyebrow, and managed to smile politely while contemplating the mysteries of lead-based face powder. You dodged the Queen's wrath, survived breakfast with your dignity mostly intact, and somehow kept your head, figuratively and, more importantly, literally. You endured wellness cures that would give a 21st century pharmacist night terrors, and you learned that in a world full of secrets and silk, being a concubine required more wit, luck, and strategic napping than most military campaigns. But for all the plotting, pageantry, and poetic gifts, it's worth pausing for a little gratitude. Tonight, as you settle in beneath clean sheets, with a real pillow and a working lock on your front door, maybe give a quiet thanks for central heating, toothpaste, and a total absence of palace intrigue. Remember, history isn't just suffering, it's also survival, resourcefulness, and the stubborn hope that tomorrow might be just a little bit better. So close your eyes, let the palace fade into the soft white noise of your fan, and know that you, dear listener, would have made an excellent concubine, at least until breakfast. Good night. Sleep well, and if you dream of velvet and gold, may all your rivals trip on their own shoes.